Welcome everyone to day 17 of our daily meditations together. I'm Zeynep and I'm really happy to be here connecting with you and practicing with you. Tonight we will explore a topic that a lot of people, including myself, find challenging. And it's also a topic that's really dear to our hearts. It's forgiveness. And before I guide us into the meditation, I would like to share a few things. I'll share 3 reasons why this practice is an important practice, why we might want to do this practice, especially nowadays where there is a lot of difficulty and tension with regards to the pandemic. And then I'll share 3 attitudes or approaches we can take when we are doing this practice. And then we're going to do a 10-15 minute meditation together, and that will conclude our time together today. So the first reason why we might want to practice forgiveness is because we have an understanding that harm happens, either someone harming us or us harming someone else or harming ourselves. It happens when we are caught in a fight, flight, freeze response. So it happens when we get caught up in a really powerful and difficult emotion. And often there is no bad intention behind it. It's just a misinformation. We're missing part of the information, or it's a wrong perception, or we just got caught in that really strong emotion for a second and we said something that actually was not what we were trying to say or do. And for that, I would like to share a wonderful little story from this book that I was talking about the other night, The Art of Forgiveness, Loving Kindness and Peace by Jack Kornfield. And actually in the rest of my brief talk in this time, I'll keep sharing some nuggets of wisdom from Jack Kornfield from this book. So in the book, he shares this story from Ellen Wallace. And it goes something like this. Imagine walking along a sidewalk with your arms full of groceries and someone roughly bumps into you so that you fall and your groceries are strewn over the ground. As you rise up from the puddle of broken eggs and tomato juice, you are ready to shout out, "You idiot, what's wrong with you? Are you blind?" But just before you can catch your breath to speak, you see that the person who bumped into you actually is blind. He too is sprawled in the spilled groceries, and your anger vanishes in an instant to be replaced by sympathetic concern. Are you hurt, and can I help you up? Our situation is like that when we clearly realize that the source of disharmony and misery in the world is ignorance. We can open the door of wisdom and compassion. So the first reason why we might want to engage in a forgiveness practice is because of this, is because often there is no bad intention. We just got caught in a strong emotion, or we were ignorant about something. The second reason why we might do this practice is because we have this intuitive understanding that forgiveness frees our heart. And we go on sometimes carrying sometimes excruciating amounts of pain of things that happened in the past. And we know that, intuitively, we know that letting it go could be possible. And if we could let it go, if we could leave it in the past, we would find a bit more freedom and space in the present moment. And for this, Jack Kornfield in his book shares one quote from Viktor Frankl, who is the author of the famous book, Man's Search for Meaning, who says, "We who lived in the concentration camps can remember those who walked through the huts comforting others, giving away their last piece of bread. They may have been few in number, but they offer sufficient proof that everything can be taken from us, but the last of human freedoms, the freedom to choose our spirit in any circumstance." So forgiveness is this freedom we might be able to find to choose a different spirit, even in the worst possible conditions. And another little dialogue he shares, Jack Kornfield shares, is he says, consider this dialogue between two former prisoners of war. First one is saying, have you forgiven your captors yet? The second one is saying, no, never. And so he responds, well, then they still have you in prison, don't they? So this reflection of what happens to us when we keep carrying that pain, when we keep grasping onto it, and what would happen if we could let it go, what freedom we would find. And finally, the third reason why we might want to do this practice is because we have this wisdom that we cannot change what happened in the past. The past is in the past. It's gone. We don't even have control over the future. The only moment we have some choice over is the present moment. And Jack Kornfield says beautifully, forgiveness means giving up all hope of a better past. And there's a lot of wisdom in that, in remembering that. And so let me briefly mention 3 ways in which we can approach this forgiveness practice. The first one is setting intentions. Ultimately, forgiveness is another intention setting practice. Tara Brach says, forgiveness can't be willed. We can only be willing. And sometimes forgiveness is not possible. We don't feel it is possible to forgive that person or to forgive ourselves. And in those moments, the attitude is to let that be okay, and to explore if we can set an intention for it. And what happens when we set that intention, and we set that intention a few more times, we stay with that intention to forgive. And just like all other intentions, we plant the seed and we watch what happens if it grows over time. And this understanding is really important that, first of all, this practice takes time, and sometimes it takes repetition, and also it cannot be forced. We're not forcing ourselves to feel a certain way. And the second thing to remember, or the second attitude to take, is this understanding that forgiving something doesn't take away or reduce our boundaries. So forgiving something that happened that was harmful, it doesn't mean that we condone it, that we allow it to happen again in the future. And it's not this forgive and forget. For this, Jack Kornfield says, forgiveness sees wisely. It willingly acknowledges what is unjust, harmful, and wrong. It bravely recognizes the sufferings of the past and understands the conditions that brought them about. There is a strength to forgiveness. When we forgive, we can also say, never again will I allow these things to happen. We may resolve to never again permit such harm to come to ourselves or to another. And forgiveness doesn't also say anything about the boundaries we feel comfortable with. For example, if something happens between us and someone else, and we don't actually feel comfortable anymore to keep in contact with that person, to talk with that person, we don't have to. So that kind of protection and boundary setting is still very healthy. Forgiveness is just about what is present in our hearts. So we can explore what it's like to forgive that person or forgive ourselves of what happened in that situation, while still not making contact or not being in close communication. And the last attitude to take is this understanding of forgiveness as an exploration. So it's this individual exploration that you can do for you. Part of forgiveness is letting go of the past, letting go of that pain, letting go of that story that you've been telling yourself, letting go of certain limiting beliefs. And not turning against anyone or not turning against yourself, not engaging in this constant battle, and just exploring what happens if you forgive or if you set the intention to forgive, and keeping an attention on your own body, on your own emotional landscape, noticing what shifts, if anything, not going into it with the expectation that something will shift, just keeping this open mind, this beginner's mind, to notice what it does for you, this practice. So let's get started now for our meditation. And again, the meditation is coming from this book by Jack Kornfield. It's called A Meditation on Forgiveness, and I will adapt it a little bit. And we will start it by a few minutes of just finding a kind and simple and compassionate presence. And then we will work on something that was maybe slightly painful in the last few days, or if you want to work on something that happened before the pandemic started, that's also, of course, okay. I will say this again as we are meditating, but one final reminder is to work on something that feels manageable to you. So if we could put pain on a scale of 1 to 10, sometimes we have the tendency to go to an 8 or 9 or 10, something that was really painful, really overwhelming. And because this is practice and we build this capacity over time, and because of the high percentage of people who have had some level of traumatic experiences, it's really important that we are mindful and we pick something that's a 4 or 5 or 6 on the scale. So something that is emotionally charged, but not too charged that it will harm us even further. So we're doing this to reduce our suffering, not to increase our suffering. So with that, I'll invite you to gently find a posture in which you feel awake and relaxed. This could be a posture where you are sitting, or where you are standing or lying down. And if you are going to sit, you can explore what will support your body the most. Is it sitting on a chair, sitting on the floor? And when you are ready, you can close your eyes or lower your gaze to a point on the floor. And begin to turn your attention inward. Just noticing yourself in this posture, in this moment, here and now. And as we begin this practice, checking in if your body needs anything else, any other type of support for you to feel both awake and relaxed. Tending to that. So maybe adjusting your posture slightly or supporting yourself with a cushion. And then deepening and lengthening your breath. Maybe counting up to 5 when you inhale and counting up to 5 when you exhale to really slow it down. Making these few breaths the deepest breaths you took all day. And with each deep breath, relaxing the body a little bit more, releasing in the shoulders, letting go in the hands and in the face. So letting these breaths really cleanse you from any tension that isn't needed. And when you are ready, you can let go of this deep breathing and bring a kind and curious attention to your anchor, whether that is the breath or the sounds or your body. We're going to stay here for about a minute. Each time the attention drifts away, without judgment or criticism, with gentleness, bringing your attention back to your anchor. Each coming back is setting an intention to find a gentle presence in this moment, to meet life as it is, to become lovingly aware of this body that's alive and breathing. To make our hearts and minds still and calm. And even if only for a minute, going from this constant doing into a mode of simply being where we don't have anything else to do, just observing our anchor. As we begin this forgiveness practice now, you might bring to mind a situation in which there was some tension lately, some hurt or some harm between you and someone else, or between you and yourself. Or between you and a group of people. Picking something that's not going to be overwhelming. So picking something on the scale of 10, something that's a 4 or 5. And you might remember a little bit about what the situation was. You might kindly notice and name the emotions that are there, such as sadness, anger, frustration. Welcoming each emotion, letting them belong to this moment. Noticing how they express themselves in your body. You might also notice if there is any blaming, any judgment, any strong beliefs you're carrying about the other or about yourself. And you might also review the time that has passed since this situation has happened. And you might notice how this pain is still there, it's alive. And you might sense yourself how there might be some barriers that you have built around your heart, or just the burden of this pain. And then you might gently recite the following phrases. There are many ways that I have hurt and harmed others, have betrayed or abandoned them, caused them suffering, knowingly or unknowingly, out of my pain, fear, anger, and confusion. And you might let these phrases open your heart up to any suffering you might have caused, any way in which you might have added to the pain in that situation. And noticing the humanity in this, the common humanity. You might simply repeat to yourself, I ask for your forgiveness. I ask for your forgiveness. And if asking for forgiveness doesn't feel possible, you might just set an intention for it. And similarly, you might reflect on or repeat the following phrases. Just as I have caused suffering to others, there are many ways that I have hurt and harmed myself. I have betrayed or abandoned myself many times in thought, word, or deed, knowingly or unknowingly. And again, you might reflect on this situation and notice if there are any ways in which you caused yourself harm. And you might feel the tenderness of that, the sorrow of this self-harm. And then you might offer to yourself just the simple phrases, I forgive myself. I forgive myself. And again, if the forgiving doesn't feel possible, just setting an intention for it. And finally, you might offer yourself the reflection There are many ways I have been harmed by others, abused or abandoned, knowingly or unknowingly, in thought, word, or deed. And again, you might go back to this situation and just notice if this may be true, if the other or the others in that situation have caused you harm. And you might again sense the tenderness of that, the sadness of that. And similarly, you might just offer the following simple phrases: I forgive you. I forgive you. And if that doesn't feel possible, you might adapt the phrases and say, to the extent that I am ready, I offer you forgiveness. To the extent that I am ready, I offer you forgiveness. Or just simply setting the intention for this forgiveness. And in the last minute of this meditation, you might find some extra tenderness and compassion for yourself. You might notice the emotions that might be arising in you and sense how you could make a bit more room for them. Understanding that causing harm to ourselves or to others, or on the opposite of that, other people causing harm to us, is a very common human experience. And the question is, what happens if we are able to let go of this pain? How does that feel in our bodies, in our hearts? That concludes our practice for tonight. Thank you so much for being here, for watching, and for doing this practice along with others. Forgiveness is a big topic and often a challenging one. So if you have any questions about it, please leave it in the comments below and I'll get back to you. And please share this video with those people who might benefit from it, and give it a thumbs up to help us reach to more people with this practice. Again, thank you so much for responding to the pandemic and to the global context with calm and connection. This is a really precious time to be showing up and practicing. Thank you so much, and see you tomorrow evening for another live meditation together at the same time, 7:30 p.m. Paris time. Take care. Be well.